awesome. Lots of science, wonderful science. You have a great background and framework now so that I can do all the clinical stuff, which is what I love to do. So tick-borne infections have a definite impact on the brain. They cause neurological, neurocognitive impairments, emotional symptoms, behavioral symptoms, and sensory symptoms. These are all things you're going to see in your practices. And there's a lot of literature out there. This is just some of it that talks about the neurocognitive symptoms in tick-borne infections. And also the neuropsychiatric symptoms. There's been a lot of research on that. And also relating this to PANS and PANDAS. And you've heard all about the multiple infections. I just want to stop here for a moment to emphasize two things that I see a lot in my clinical practice. Children coming in, and I see children anywhere from preschool all the way up through adulthood. I see a lot of history of pneumonia, usually pneumonia very early within the first few years, and also a lot of ear infections and sinus infections. And I know I don't think much was said about ear infections, but I think that that's something that I know in my work with children with language impairments and language disorders, ear infections are very prominent. So I'm particularly interested in that overlap, since a lot of the children I see wind up having language impairments. Dr. Jones, who you've heard a lot about this morning, who is internationally renowned pediatrician in New Haven, uses the term infection-induced autoimmune encephalopathy. Dr. Frid and others refer to it as infection-induced autoimmune encephalopathy. So encephalitis, I think the encephalopathy, as I was talking to Dr. Moorcroft about, is a much sort of bigger umbrella. And Dr. Jones has done a lot of work with that. And he has talked about the presence of multiple infections. What I find, and what the literature really shows when you look at the literature, is that you're talking about diffuse brain involvement. There's evidence of frontal lobe involvement, with executive functioning impaired, self-regulatory behavior, motor skills are affected, temporal lobe circuits, language, memory, auditory processing are all affected. Parietal lobe circuits are implicated with visual spatial processing, decoding facial expressions, difficulty with that. Occipital lobe circuits, midbrain. Dr. Padula taught me all about midbrain and the role of midbrain, and limbic system involvement, basal ganglia, where you then get into all the PANS research. So there is evidence of diffuse brain involvement. You're not talking about focal lesions at all. What happens is that as a result of these impairments, and neurocognitive impairments and visual processing impairments, there is a significant impact on academic performance. You're going to get children coming into your practice, and when you ask them, there are frequent absences, there are extended absences. The children arrive late to school, they leave early. They talk about difficulty following lessons and class lectures. They have tremendous sensitivity to classroom conditions, to the noises, to the lights. And these are the children who often get labeled as school phobic, when in fact it's just that the environment is so painful for them that they just they can't tolerate being in school. Schools are always always saying to parents, well, we just have to get your child back in school and your child will be fine. And that's probably the worst thing that you can do to a child who's experiencing these sensory overload in school. The children have difficulty with class changes. It's a wonderful question to ask them, and talk about proprioceptive problems and the visual distortions. In crowded hallways when they have to get down stairways quickly, it's a real challenge for them. They have difficulty with note-taking. They can't follow a lecture either because of slow processing speed or fine motor problems or some combination. Lots of test-taking problems. We'll talk about homework assignments. They can't get through their homework. Homework takes too long. They wind up staying up late to get their homework done. These are the children who you have to go beyond how are your grades, because a lot of these children maintain their grades, but they maintain them at the cost of sleep. So an assignment that should take an hour takes them 2 or 3 hours. And these are often dedicated students who won't go to bed until their assignments are done.